Welcome to the London Launch webinar on the future of venues. We're going to be running this for about 30 minutes, then we'll have a Q&A. Please do use the Q&A feed at the bottom. And obviously, I'd ask you to wait really probably for halfway through until you start the Q&As, because we've got some meaty questions which I think will be answered early on. And we'll try and pick up a few as we go through the session. If you do run out of steam or need to walk the cat, we're recording this and we'll send a link out to watch again in the next 24 hours to those that attended and those that pre-registered but could not attend today. And so to my esteemed panelists, and as we prepare for the return to football on our screens later today, for the unbridled joy of around about half of you, I present my own talented trio of strikers today. We've got 3 venue leads, with not an own goal amongst them and a huge experience, all from very different types of non-residential London venues. So on the left wing on the picture as you see it, we have Jonathan Reed, still sporting a very fine haircut despite the lockdown, whilst I carry my Andy Carroll top knot with me wherever I go. And Jonathan is a very seasoned and experienced person in the venues industry, as you're aware. I first visited Tobacco Dock 15 years ago when it was a sort of failed retail park, I seem to recall. And I thought, that's not going to work. I'm not going to touch that. And how wrong was I? Because Jonathan and his partner, Patrick Donovan, relaunched Tobacco Dock in 2012. And as we all know, it's an amazing events destination. And it's grown to become one of the most dynamic and iconic events venues there. In 2019, Tobacco Dock hosted over 260 events and for brands including Accenture, Samsung, Google, Cisco, BBC. And I think the important thing from their perspective is obviously there are a lot of digital clients there, and I'm sure Jonathan will fill us in later. And more recently, he opened Skylight Rooftop Bar in 2017. He'll talk about that later. And he's obviously got some flexible co-working spaces, which he's just reopening again. On a centre forward or goal attack, as she normally plays, and today's undoubted rose between two thorns, we have Mishka Fogel, who's head of events at Inception Group. And she's one of the many talented people I've only met recently via Zoom, worked for Inception Group for 7 years and head of events, overseeing obviously all the bookings for amazing brands, and working with the challenge of working with B2C and B2B events in the same time. And Inception Group, as many of you know, and operate a unique and diverse group of bars, restaurants and nightclubs throughout London. When Mishka started, they had 3. They've now got 11 venues, with the latest opening Cahoots Ticket Hall and Control Room last October. So after a very busy 7 years and a whirlwind career, Mishka's obviously got time to reflect on where we are now. And having met one of their owners on a hotel tennis court a couple of years ago, I can assure you that they're very determined. I left the court without winning a game and without any sympathy from Duncan at that time. And last but no means least, on the right wing, not necessarily a political position, I add very swiftly, we have Alistair Stewart. Alistair is the MD of ETC Venues, which he acquired in 2006. The business has grown to become the world's leading non-residential venue provider, hosting 18,000 events and nearly 1 million delegates in 2019. And his leadership was recognized by the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2019. And he's just fulfilled his long-term ambition to open a venue in New York, which is fantastic. I first met Alistair in the early 1990s when, as a client of mine at Initial Style Conferences, I managed to further his career by hospitalizing his boss following a visit to a slippery inflatable slide. Still awaiting a thank you for that, but he decided to leave Initial Style when his company was bought out and rebranded Rent-A-Kill Initial Style, which is one of the worst venue rebrands, I think, in living memory. So just to start us off, I just wanted to, and welcome all to listening, I hope you're all good. I'll just start off with a quick slide, which I think defines what we're trying to do today, which is share some thinking. You know, we've got the doorkeepers present here today on the panel, and they'll be sharing their plans for opening them up for us all. And we all need a new beginning pretty damn quick, as I'm sure we would agree. So just to get this thing going, I just want to ask a quick question that everyone's been asking really, which is around venue opening, I suppose. And the question is not necessarily about your venues, but Alistair, for you first, when do you think the first tranche of corporate events will be staged in London, and what do you think the social distancing measures will be then at that time?
Morning, Sam. Very good to be with you. And listen, quick answer to that. I think we're expecting to host our first event mid to late July for smaller groups, building into bigger groups through the autumn. And that we're all praying for a 1 metre social distancing from the politicians. But look, if it's more than 1 metre, we can certainly cope with that and adapt to it, certainly for 2020.
Brilliant. And Mishka?
Well, we're actually hoping to open our venues, some of the venues in July, but I am expecting the event side of things to return around the October, November time, at which point I'm hoping that the social distance will be around the 1 metre mark.
Yeah, well, we all hope that. Jonathan?
We're opening Skylight, our rooftop bar, on the 4th of July, all being well. And we have got groups that are booked in July for that. So very much hoping that goes ahead. In terms of the main venue, I think it's going to be late-ish September, third week of September probably. And then, you know, the autumn is getting progressively busy at the moment, so fingers crossed for that. There's obviously a lot of movement to hybrid events as opposed to full in-person events, but it will be good to get that open as well.
Brilliant, thank you. My take on it is that we'll really get to be busy in September, and I expect and hope that the social distancing will be down to 1 metre by then, or maybe 1.5. But we'll see what's happening. These things are slightly out of our control. I thought I'd just, before I start the main questions, I thought I would just show everyone a single slide survey that we undertook literally in the last few days as we struggled to try and find a sort of right home and format for the London Christmas Party Show, which was due to happen in May and then July, and we're in discussions with various people about that. So we asked the event buyers about their willingness to attend events. Now, event buyers, obviously, we know the profile of the corporate event buyers, and they're probably pretty reflective of the average delegate or attendee of a conference, party or product launch. And we discovered that only 19% of event buyers would not be happy to attend a live event in 2020. Alistair will pick up on the actual corporate sentiment about staging events, but this is willingness for attendees to attend. And obviously you can see on the other sides that obviously, you know, the majority of people are happy to attend various other types of events. So I think my take on it, looking at the quote, is that we have venues happy to and keen to open for commercial and many other reasons. We have people wishing to attend events, or happy to attend events, the majority, and I think that number will, that 19% will only get smaller as we get out and about a bit more. But the key is, how can we persuade the corporate buyers, whether on this call or otherwise, the people actually who are putting the money up for these events, that it's safe and reasonable to do so? I think that's the key thing for me. And with that in mind, I think just if I can just whiz around the panel and ask how you're prepping for creating engaging safe spaces for staging events as and when you wish to open. Alistair, you're talking about July. I've got a slide, I think, which I can pop up for you next, and then we'll ask Mishka and Jonathan in due course. So Alistair, over to you.
Well, really, yes, it's as per the slide, Sam, it's a sort of four-point sort of plan of action. First of all, our 18-point plan is now well distributed on our website if you'd like to see it, and underpins, you know, the whole strategy, if you like, of sort of reopening post-COVID. In relation to the cleaning and sanitization issue, our campaign, A Breath of Fresh Care, is really about a certified COVID controlled cleaning standard. Obviously, we're going to have to adapt our space, so new floor plans, new capacity charts are all available now, and we can adapt those around 2 meters, 1.5 or 1 meters. And, you know, certainly in the short term, our expertise as a hybrid meeting provider in partnership with Glisser and broadcast transmission standard filming at our venues, and we're building some studio capacity there, will be a very important part of our overall plan. So that's a sort of summary of it, Sam.
Okay, and just quickly, because you've got, I suppose Jonathan may have the same, but you know, when we talk about, obviously you have multi-client use on a single day in many or most of your spaces. Indeed, you designed them for that very purpose with a sort of Russian doll set of different venue sizes. So how are you dealing with the sort of catering and I think the Achilles heel for a lot of clients in mixed use spaces is things like the toilets and maybe the food service. Have you got any thoughts on that you can share?
Well, I think that's going to be an absolutely key buying criteria. I mean, we're lucky at Etc. Venues in that we've got 16 venues, we've got 300 rooms, we've got independent floors, we've got separate accesses. We've even got space that people can get to via escalators and straight out of mainline stations. So we've got a significant number of advantages. And you know, I was listening to a webinar yesterday with buyers from BP and IBM, and they were talking about the importance of safe passage, which I think is an interesting bit of terminology. And certainly they were highlighting real concerns they've got about shared spaces where there's transient business. So I think for those of us in independent, non-residential venues, where we can offer the space privately and exclusively is going to be an absolutely key issue. And certainly something for Etc. Venues to leverage to the advantage we've got over the amount of space we've got. Okay, and Mishka, I'm going to pop up your slide, which is a slightly different approach, may I say, or a more creative approach, but obviously with some solid, chemical and hygiene thinking around it, I'm sure. But I'll allow you to present this slide of Charlie and Duncan.
Yeah, so I mean, for us as a brand, it's really important that we're using innovative ideas whilst we're still practicing social distancing, keeping all our staff safe and keeping all the customers safe, which will always be our #1 priority. So we will have things such as the hand sanitizer on arrival, thermal screens above the doors on arrival, one-way systems in place, regular toilet checks, more regular than what they used to be. But at the same time, it's really important to us that we stay true to our brand and we're not creating a sterile environment. So we are going to use things such as the mannequins you can see on this picture. This is at Mr. Fogg's residence in Mayfair. We're going to use those to create space between the tables and also allow the venue to feel busier if we are capped on the numbers that we are allowed in there. For example, the other picture you can see is Mr. Fogg's House of Botanicals in Fitzrovia, and we're going to have the staff dressed up as beekeepers rather than wearing your typical PPE. Another idea we've got is at Maggie's in Chelsea. We'll give our customers a rubber ring when they arrive. It's an 80s nightclub, so they'll get a big rubber ring which will keep their distance away from the other guests, and they can take this home with them. And we'll also give them litter pickers so they can go to the bar and pick up their drink while still keeping that distance.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So we just want to make sure we've got, lots of fun ideas. Yeah. We don't want to become like a perspex prison.
No, I get that, and you're sticking to your core values while staying safe, I think, will be key. And I don't suppose there's any chance of opening a bar called Boris's anytime soon, having the success of Maggie's. But we'll leave that for a few months to decide whether that's a good plan or not. In the meantime, Jonathan, I'll put up your slide if I may.
Thanks, Sam. Yes, I think our approach is very similar to Alistair and his team at Etc. Venues. We've got full COVID secure protocols. We've been working very closely with Informa, who are a large client of ours, and they've got their all secure protocol. We're following that very closely. And obviously looking at a whole load of different areas from contactless registration, obviously the hygiene and sanitization programs. Not a key thing for us, although we're only 500 meters away from Tower Bridge. We're outside the congestion parking zone, and we've got 600 car parking spaces adjacent to the venue. So we think that's going to give us some competitive advantage for those that don't want to be taking public transport. that they've got an option of driving and parking at the venue and not getting clobbered for the congestion charge. Tobacco Dock, for those that know it, we've got numerous open air spaces, obviously skylight on the roof, but Quayside is a pretty substantial open air space. We've got open air spaces actually within the venue itself in terms of our bandstands and walkways. So they are all being designed obviously for physical distancing, but as safe open area spaces. As with Alice,
fill us in on this, on your sort of, on the rehearsal. Yes, we did rehearse it. It doesn't seem like it maybe to some viewers, but you talked a little bit about this, your studio concept. So if you could briefly just introduce that, that would be great.
Yes, indeed. So we've developed in conjunction with our in-house partners TDAV and Max Wi-Fi. We're effectively building 3 studios at Tobacco Dock for hybrid solutions. So they will be as plug and play as possible in terms of LED walls pre-installed in there, live camera positions, mixing, etc. We've got a huge amount of bandwidth at Tobacco Dock. We've got a 3 gigabyte pipe for these sort of things, which is why we attract so many leading tech brands hosting their large events with us. So that will all be ready to go in about 10 days time, and we're already taking bookings from that. And obviously a lot of events are pivoting from in-person to a hybrid model now. Festival and Marketer being one example of that.
And while you're still on, your thoughts on the sort of venue certification. I must say that I've been following what Ed Poland and his team at HireSpace are doing. I know they're slightly competitive with, or very competitive with what I do, but I've applauded their sort of approach to certification, both for agency staff, which my team are doing. Thank you, Ed, for that. And also, but more importantly, for the sort of venue white paper certification. What are your thoughts briefly on that, if you would?
I think they're really useful. As I said, we've worked very closely with Informa in terms of, as an organizer, a massive organizer in terms of what their requirements are. And we've taken a lot of learnings from that and have developed our own certification in conjunction with them. But actually what Ed and his team have been doing, I think is fantastic. Not everyone has got facilities resource, health and safety expertise in-house if you're a smaller venue, or you've got a lot of staff on furlough. So I think it's a really good initiative. Yeah,
and I think personally, it's a part of our ability. So if we say that you're open and people want to come, then someone's got to pay for the doors to open, and it's all part of convincing the corporate buyers. And in these large companies, there's nervousness, obviously understandable, about risk, and we need to overcome that. Alistair, do you have any thoughts on that further?
No, I agree with Jonathan. I think that the more people can help draw attention to the importance of that, the better. And white papers, and it's quite a number of them out there, are great. I think from our perspective, and we've gone really one step further, because we've teamed up with an organisation called Navitas, which are previously the European Safety Bureau, and we've committed to this COVID controlled certification, and it's going to be audited. And these are proper ex-health and safety auditors. So it's something that we can really point to as being done thoroughly and properly. And I've just got to say, Mishka, I am in love with your beekeeper ideas as to how we can try and take this very dry subject of people walking around cleaning venues and put some imagination into it. So brilliant idea, and well done you on that one.
Yeah, but think of your own ideas, Alistair. Don't just steal the panelists. I think that would be a very poor start.
I'm always happy to shamelessly steal great ideas.
It's on record now, and it'll be broadcast tomorrow. But thank you. And yeah, I think it's really important that we do this. And what we're doing at Venue Search London is we're actually creating our sort of, we'll only send inquiries to venues who will sort of sign a certificate effectively agreeing that they will deliver the minimum standard. And it's that sort of practice that I think is really important. Mishka, turning back to you, obviously, your social, your beautiful social, vibrant spaces are normally packed with Christmas revelers, both exclusive privates, I presume, general public, if we can call your visitors that, and obviously small table groups and bookings. So it's too early to say, but you know, what are your thoughts about Christmas? There was something Duncan was talking about, or Charlie on Sky News, I think, about dance floors and your approach there. That was probably the rubber ring idea, was it?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think what's going to be key is being really flexible with all the events going forward, and that's going to be flexible with our cancellation policies, the deposits that we're taking from people, and the minimum spends that we are charging. So we are going to just adjust those and work with our clients individually on those to whatever makes them feel comfortable when it comes to paying a deposit and cancellations. I think it's going to be important for us to create new experiences and work the experiences that we already have. So we do things such as gin tastings, pizza making classes. So making those experiences work for smaller groups. So you might have a big party, but they'll be split into smaller groups and all do the experience over the course of the evening. We have karaoke rooms that we can use for smaller groups as well. And we're also going to be looking at home experiences, so offering cocktail masterclasses and pizza making class for people. They can do it at home if they don't want to bring their staff to the venue, and also look at doing pop-ups within people's offices. So we'll go into their office at Christmas and we'll take the bar to them with the brand that they prefer and create the party within the office for them. So that's kind of some of the ideas that we're looking at for December.
And how about 2-meter diameter pizzas? Would that be a thing?
I mean, I think for us at Bunga Bunga, the issue we have with the pizzas is that our food's all shared. So, you know,
3 meter and we can all have an edge.
Yeah, so it's something now we're going to have to look at, and, you know, possibly doing individual pizzas rather than long.
And I think, you know, the pop-ups are certainly something that we're looking at. And I think, you know, taking the party to the office where people have already got their protocols in place, which might be sad news for some venues, I think is one of the interim solutions that a lot of people are looking at. And certainly at story events, we've done a few of those in normal times, and we would expect to do a fair few more. Jonathan, obviously you're you know, don't tell me how many tens of thousands of people normally grace your 8 different doors in an average December, but I know it's a big number. It won't be as big a number this year, and obviously you do shareds and exclusives and all sorts. So give us your take on that, and you obviously have your catering partners there as well. And what are you thinking around about Christmas? I know it's early, but just an initial view.
I think, I mean, the conversations I've had with clients and the team have had with clients is that everyone is waiting for an announcement in terms of what the government guidance is going to be on events. And, you know, we're talking a lot about risk and corporate attitude to it. Until there is some guidance, I don't think anyone is going to commit to it. I mean, we haven't lost any of our December bookings for exclusive parties at the moment. But, you know, they are going to want to know on what basis those parties can go ahead, and therefore if they're worth retaining, I think. We've also noticed that a lot of clients are switching from a sort of purely sort of party into a staff reward and recognition style event as well. So I think there will be a move towards more of those, and obviously it depends on how a particular vertical has been impacted as to whether it's deemed appropriate to be having any sort of celebration, if there are redundancies and the business has been really severely impacted by COVID.
Yeah, I think so, and I think obviously I think this, you know, personally having worked in the shared party market in the past, I think that the smaller groups will end up in exclusive venues, and I think that, you know, so I think the shared party market in large venues will possibly be worst hit. Whereas I think if people can do hybrid events, and as you say, Jonathan, quite rightly, you know, do a sort of, you know, 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock with some drinks at the end and skip the dance floor, I think that's possibly going to be the solution. And obviously that allows you to broadcast internal company awards in a hybrid fashion, just like the Oscars for those actors who can't be bothered to go to the ceremony and can pick it up remotely with a video message. So I think that's fantastic. Alistair, just turning to you, and obviously, as you quite rightly pointed out yesterday, you do obviously are involved in Christmas, but with your specific sort of conference and training hat on, just in terms of the September to December bookings, you know, what's your approach been? And, you know, if someone's booked something they can only now potentially attend half it, how are you dealing with the sort of commercial challenges around that and all that sort of stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think Sam, the whole September to December is a really big question for all of us in the venue community at the moment. I think I noted the iMeet confidence tracker came out overnight, and that continues to decline as a percentage of people who are saying they're going to hold events in this period. I think it's gone down from something like 70% to about 35%. So I think we can expect fewer bookings. We've still got quite a decent order book for the autumn. And for the most part, it's starting off with thinking about how they get to the venue. So we've introduced our cycle scheme now. We're providing rooms in all the venues for people to put their bikes in, and that's potentially helpful for people who may be able to cycle to the venues. We've already said that we'll offer 25% more space to clients as part of the package, so that people have got more space. And look, we're going to have a lot of rooms, not all of which are going to be full. So we've got plenty of options to offer people.
Yeah.
And most importantly, we want to allow people to book with confidence, in the sense that, for any reason they need to lift and shift their booking into later into the year or in 21, that we're offering flexibility to do that. So I think it's a sort of an overall package of safe venues, flexible terms, and putting confidence into everyone, as you said from your survey, for people to come. We've got lots of enthusiasm from delegates to come, but we've got some nervous corporates, and together we all need to build that confidence up and help them feel confident that what we can offer is safe and much more exciting than these lovely webinars that we're all participating.
Yes. Well, apart from this one, plainly, Alistair. Mishka, coming to you, same question in terms of autumn bookings, and obviously you've got probably people holding on for stag and hen do's, small social groups, birthday parties, and exclusive hires. You've got a diary that's full of hovering holds, let's call them.
Yeah, I mean, we have found that quite a lot of our events have decided to postpone and push back to 2021. But we do still have quite a lot of bookings in place still for the last quarter. So I definitely feel like clients are holding on, and they really do still want to come to the venue if they can do. So we're hoping that, we still can hold on to some of these venues. And if not, we're being really flexible, again, like Alistair said, flexible with cancellations, flexible with moving the bookings and not putting a time frame on that for them, so they still can come to us even if it is next year.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And Jonathan, same question about autumn, very briefly, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, a lot of our events from the autumn have moved into 21 now, particularly with US clients. Without any guidance in place, they just took the easier option of postponing the event. We've got other events that are switching to a hybrid format, which makes sense. We have got bookings, sitting there, and we very much hope will be going ahead, including some large consumer events like Taste Festive Edition. They obviously had to cancel their Regent's Park event in June, and they're very much hoping that they can go ahead in November with us, as we do. It's their,
all the challenges of getting food safely into people's mouths. That sounds like if that goes ahead, that'll be a really good sign of people getting into grips.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously, the social distancing rule or guidance is really key for that. A metre versus 2 meters makes a huge difference for fundamentally a consumer show. So we shall, and I think it probably will be at a metre by late November when that is. So we'll wait and see. And we put Skylight on sale yesterday, and had really positive signs. We sold over 400 tables yesterday in just over 4 hours, and the momentum's keeping up. So it makes perfect sense. It's an open air space, yeah. But hopefully that consumer confidence will tip over into corporate confidence, and we'll be hosting events in the autumn.
Brilliant. And John, just before I move on to the others, could you have just a quick look on the Q&A, because I can't seem to get the drop down working. I'm admitting it.
Yeah, Sam, one or two people asking to drop the shared screen. I don't know whether you see they can actually potentially see us.
Oh, right. Oh, yes, possibly. They can't do both. You really want to see us? Right. Stop share. There we are. Is that better? Hopefully. I've got the questions
It's
up.
about confidence, I think, and what we can do as a group, as an industry group, to build confidence. I think that's a sort of main theme of the Q&A.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's just move on to a rather different question, which is not something that's been discussed a lot. And I think we're interesting to maybe start with Mishka on this one. Is what are your thoughts about how you sort of moving your marketing messaging? There's been a lot of fantastic social media and e-marketing around all the great work that the events industry is doing to support the NHS and others. But I think it'd be really good to understand, what you're thinking about in terms of your pricing and your sales, because ultimately if you're open, then you want to get some stuff in. It's a balance of price per head versus capacity and moving the marketing on now as we all expect to be able to have some good news pushed out soon.
Yeah, so for us, it's going to be a gradual phase reopening. We're not going to open all 11 venues all at once. So we'll open a few of them, and we're just going to make sure that we try and adopt lots of fun ideas that are really true and safe to our actual brand when we do reopen, because everyone's going to be dying to get out there and have a good time. And, we can always offer something a little bit different than just going to the local pub or something, and you can get an experience in our venue. So we're going to be working really hard on pushing those experiences with the restrictions that are in place, and making sure that they're safe experiences for everyone. As mentioned before, a lot of flexibility. We'll be very flexible with pricing. I saw that someone asked on the Q&A, will our prices increase? For us, for minimum spends for private events, I think if anything, actually at the moment we are offering a discounted, minimum spend. So actually, I think for us, we'll be just, happy to have the revenue. So we will be really, really flexible to work with people.
And it's a bit of a, if we can't price stuff attractively to get people to do events, then they're not going to do events. So the fact that we've got to crack the nut and get events happening.
Exactly.
Starting off with a promotional event for agencies or something, to actually, give the agencies confidence, that the key buyers.
100%, let them come and experience it first, for sure. We'd be more than happy to do that.
That wasn't a request, it was just a humble suggestion. Jonathan, coming to you about that very briefly, if you would.
In terms of sales and marketing, actually we're gradually seeing an uptick in inquiry levels at the moment. Admittedly, they are mainly for 2021 and beyond at the moment, but that's quite positive at the moment. In terms of marketing, we're, apart from pushing messaging out like Skylight opening, we've kept our powder pretty dry on that at the moment. We're finding that a lot of our agency and corporate clients are on furlough at the moment, so I think it's a little early to be bombarding them with marketing messages at the moment, but we're getting closer to that period of time, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of preparation work going on at the moment.
Good. And Jonathan, while you're on, just the next question about agency relationships. I just touched on it with Mishka. Careful who you're talking to here, but what is your view of do you think the role of agencies and venue brokers is going to change your relationship? Obviously, you rely, as you previously mentioned, quite heavily on some of these agencies and venue bookers, experiential agencies and venue finders sort of bringing you business. Do you see any change in their role and importance to you over the next couple of years as a result of what's happened?
I think it's one of those moments where agencies that prove the added value to their clients will get through this, and they will thrive afterwards. Those that added questionable value are going to find it really difficult to survive, I think.
But in terms of your relationship with them, which is a slightly different question, you see them as, in principle, as you see them as continually important in terms of driving revenues and awareness of your spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we still, have a significant percentage of clients that book directly with us. So actually, the relationship with agencies, particularly creative agencies, is the partnership about delivering the best experience possible for the end client, as opposed to one where they're introducing business in terms of they're bringing a client to us that need a venue space.
And I think, Alistair, from memory, when I first came and presented a concept about years ago, I remember you had a slightly reticent view about the value of agencies and venue bookers at ECC, which is completely understandable. Where are you in that piece at the moment?
I'm a reformed character, Sam. Look, I think I agree with what Jonathan says. I think looking at all the questions coming in, this question about trust and confidence is absolutely key. So from my perspective, it's not really a discussion about the value of intermediaries. For our clients, it's who they're going to trust most to recommend the right venues who are going to be, going to rematch themselves to what is now required. So it's about trust and confidence. And if our agency partners can do as good a job of that as we can, we absolutely value that relationship. And, I think there are a lot of furloughed agents out there at the moment. So I'll just put a quick plug in that, our website is full of good information on our post-COVID plans. And if you can rehearse and get up to speed on all of that, then we're looking forward to working with you, because you'll do as good a job as my own team on ensuring that, we can communicate as effectively and as confidently as we want to be able to go with this.
Brilliant. And Alistair, while you've seen the question on lifts, and I think you might be I know that you've got quite a big lift in one of your venues that we've used before. So just on that subject of safety and lifts, I think I might.
Yeah, actually, I saw that question, and it's high floors are definitely going to be an issue. I think we've been looking at the staircases, and in some cases we can open up more staircases. Trying to encourage people to walk downstairs is relatively easy, and certainly asking people to walk up a couple of flights seems relatively straightforward. And yes, I think lifts will be an issue certainly for the next few months. But I think we'll see all of that ease, certainly, as people get more relaxed.
Walking up a couple of flights of steps is good for the nation's health anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've all had that experience. Thanks. Are there any other questions that we should pick up on quickly? Mishka, do you want to just come in on the agency piece very quickly, since you've got a lot of...
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it'll be really important to keep those relationships up and keep working with agencies. We're going to be happy to offer higher commissions if that means that the agencies are going to push our venues forward. So, that's something we're happy to talk about. And I think it'll be important to show the agencies, how we are keeping safe. Because they need to be able to trust and rely on our venues so that they can recommend them to their clients.
I mean, all three of you work for, and I know Jonathan's not really a group of venues, but ultimately you've got so many internal venues in your venue. You're hitting hard with a tens of millions of pounds of the turnover, all of you. But I think the important thing for the smaller venues, agency reach, on their social and on their e-marketing, I think is really, really important. And obviously we need to support the smaller venues that may not have as much funding. Obviously Livery Halls and Guildhall will be fine because they're probably generally well funded, but there are lots of small bespoke venues that we know about that obviously will need pushing so that we can keep that amazing variety, that unique variety that London has in its London venue scene. And I've said it for years, there's no city in the world that has a better variation in terms of its venues. Alistair, just a quick question, because I've just compared London to no one else. You obviously took a giant leap across the Atlantic, some would say, just so you could fund your travel through your business, and you opened up a venue in what we now call the Big Bruised Apple, but hopefully it's coming down the other side due to the fantastic work from the locals there. What's it like over in New York now? I mean, obviously closed, but what's the sense you get from your team on your transatlantic Zoom calls?
Well, I think the first thing, and to Jonathan's point earlier about we desperately need information in the UK, is a fantastic Governor Cuomo in New York, and he does these incredible press conferences, so we know exactly where we stand in New York at the moment. He's got this 5-phase opening plan. There is a cap of 50 at the moment, which we now know means that we know what the maximum numbers are. And look, I mean, the great thing about New York, having lived over there for a while, is they're an amazing bunch of people, and this is all going to come down to the spirit of Londoners, the spirit of New Yorkers. And I can't think of two better cities in the world where the people, the populace, and particularly those who are younger, who I think feel much less threatened by what's going on, will lead us all back into activity. They'll fill Mishka's bars and Jonathan's rooftop garden and my venues during the day with our rooms. And so it's what I would bring to the answer, Sam, is the fantastic confidence of New Yorkers, and let's hope those of us in London and the UK can match that sort of spirit and confidence.
Yeah, well, the New Yorkers have been through more terrible times than anyone else, so there's some benefit in their experience and their resilience throughout this, which I think has been fantastic. So just a final question then to all three of you, the big money question, and it's about money, and I did brief them on this before, so they are prepared. How do you see your event revenues changing in percentage terms between 2019 calendar year and 2021? Just taking 2020 out of the equation, dropping it in the recycling bin, which is what we'd all love to do as quickly as possible. But what's your best guess? Alistair, while you're on and looking pretty in pink there, do you want to answer that question first?
Well, I'm not going to put a number on the fall next year. I think it will probably fall. I think, I run a bigger business in the sector. We've already had signals that there are going to be some venue closures in our competitors. We've got some smaller venues coming to us who are interested in our brand and in our resources, and possibly doing some management deals with them. So whilst I expect our own revenues to fall next year by Sam, I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunity going to arise from recession. Etc. Venues grew in the last recession, in the post-Lehman's area, and that's my ambition to do it again. And I think we're really looking at 2022 as year one of our new business plan now, and getting back, opening new venues. We had a third venue in New York lined up. We're probably going to put that on hold for the moment. And we've got a good pipeline in the UK. So overall, I'm twitchy about next year, as I think it would only be reasonable. But for those of us who are financially strong, got good investors, got the resources, got the confidence, I think we can get through what inevitably will be a tricky year next year.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree with Alistair.
A decent answer to this.
I agree with Alistair. I think it's very hard to call, because actually 21 in some ways is a bit of a false picture at the moment. We've had so many events that are postponed to 2021, which on the one hand is great that hopefully the events will go ahead next year, but it also takes inventory away from us as well. So 2021, I don't, isn't a great benchmark for it. It's, the forward bookings look really promising, but it is largely postponed events rather than purely new business coming through. I've been in this industry nearly as long as you have, Sam, and we bounce back from things like this, so I've got no doubts about the medium term picture for the events industry, but I think a lot is going to change, quite frankly, and we will have different revenue streams. We all have catering as part of our event offering, which generates margin. If there is a medium term view that actually hybrids are great and we have smaller in-person audience in there, that's going to impact catering revenue. So we will have to see how it goes. But yeah, in terms of the overall future, I've got no doubts that we will bounce back. We are incredibly resilient as an industry, incredibly talented, and it will be fine.
We are indeed. Speaking of which, Mishka.
Yeah, again, I haven't put a percentage on this. I think it's really crystal ball gazing and impossible for us to actually say. I think it's going to depend on how the virus is contained and if there's a second wave. So it's really hard to put a number on it. But I think that we would hope by Christmas 21, we'll be close to our 2019 levels. Yeah. And we just hope that people, you know, choose the best run venues like ourselves to come and host their events there. And hopefully by 2022, we'll, you know, be back to normal. But 2021, it's going to be a really slow recovery, I think.
Well, in the absence of a proper answer in my panelists, I'm going to give that a go. I think it's going to be, I've been saying this to my senior team, I believe our businesses in bespoke and venue finding will be about 20% down year on year. And I think that'll be slightly inflated because we, like other agencies, have probably got a better forward order book than we've ever had. Jonathan, if you have a loss of inventory next year due to forward bookings, that's in the nice problem to have category for me, but obviously I take that point.
You can only sell it once though, Sam.
Sorry?
You can only sell your inventory once though.
Yeah, but once should be good enough if you fill it up. Anyway, let's debate that after this webinar, shall we? But I very much hope, and obviously the news last night, you know, some medical news comes through. It's all encouraging, I would say, and I'm obviously grateful for, we're obviously grateful for everyone's working. But it takes a lot of positivity, I think, and just coming to a couple of questions, and I'm going to pull out the ones we really haven't covered. And I start with, what is your advice? And I'm going to answer this first. What's your advice to event professionals who've lost their jobs due to COVID? Will the demand for jobs be higher come September? I think the frank answer to that is the demand for jobs. You know, it's all about retaining as many jobs as we can. As we're all sitting here as people who influence that decision. And, you know, we're determined to retain as many people as we can in our organisations, and that is my determination, you know, but obviously everyone has to cut their cloth to business need. I think the key is that I'm hoping that, you know, people are considering things like sabbaticals if they can afford to, you know, do some travelling, if it's safe to do so over the winter months, so that people can come back. But there will be a lot of flexible working, I sense, in the industry, a lot of increased reliance on freelance work, I sense, is my guess. You know, so I think it's going to be tough out there. You know, sometimes it's a time to consider career change, but, you know, if you're in an industry that's been worse hit than others. But that's all I can say on the matter. But I know, having spoken to so many business owners and leaders, that we're all determined to survive this and retain as many staff as we can in the process. And that's all I think I want to say. And I don't know if anyone else to come in this, gentleman, maybe. Either of you, Alistair, Jonathan?
No, look, Sam, this is the hardest part of what's going on, and you know, looking at my LinkedIn is just a huge numbers of people that are worried about their job or as you say, have lost their job. And I think, you know, hang on to your self-confidence, hang on to what you're good at. The industry, as you say, will come back. You know, probably the hardest part of the last 5 years for me has been finding good quality event professionals. So if that's what you are, you will be back in demand very soon.
Good, thank you. Jonathan, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's very true. I think, you know, there is, you know, that there has been over the last few years actually, you know, a difficulty in hiring really great people. But if you are one of those, then of course you're going to come back quicker. I think the question was specifically about September. I think there will be more positive signs by September, but depending on what your role is within the industry, it might take a little longer than that until you're back. You know, if you've got an operational role, I think there could be, you know, a delay before you're really required. If you're sales and marketing, I think then it will be earlier than that.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to the screen share. Sorry if you don't see my face. I'm just going to wrap up, and there are lots of questions on the feed, some of which we've answered well, some of which we've half answered. I will, if you want to re-ask them on email, you've all got my email because I sent you one this morning. I will do my best to answer it from my perspective sometime later today once I've exercised my dogs. But I think the key here is, just to finish off, is that you know, another quote from a Canadian philosopher. You know, breaking down a closed door is quicker than waiting for someone to answer it. So I think that message is all about people being willing to come and attend events. And I know that there's some question on the feed about people being insecure about coming to London. I think that in London specifically, we are well ahead of the situation, and the incidence of cases is reducing. And I think, but obviously people won't attend events until they're basically comfortable with traveling on public transport or even on a bicycle. I'm not sure which would be more dangerous for me, because not everyone can have a venue like Jonathan where we can drive. And if everyone drove, then no one would get to Tobacco Dock. So ultimately it's a staged recomforting, if that's the right word, of the process. And don't judge where you sit now on lockdown in your homes as to where you might be when you have to come back to work, and you'll be welcome back to your agencies, your venues, or your supplier offices and warehouses, wherever they may be, because we're judging something that we don't quite understand yet. But the key message, I think, is that generally people are happy to attend events from my little sample, and venues are happy to stage them, and are taking huge strides in marketing, sales, logistics, principally to keep these things open. So I will leave with that message, and just a couple of other things. So thank you to Jonathan, Mishka and Alistair. I will send you links to all their websites with a link to the recording. Finally, just a quick plea, I will put a link to our NSPC show webpage. We are, if you've enjoyed this free content and you wish to make it slightly less free, then please do donate a small amount to the NSPCC on a link I'll be sending out the next couple of days. I don't need to tell you how important they are currently and have been to the future of our nation. So with that, thank you, Alistair.
Thank you.
You can say goodbye, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Sam.
And to Mishka for joining us. And if I fail to exit this recording effectively, I'll apologise to all the listeners, but that is the end of our webinar. See you next time. Thank you for joining.